Hi, welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang. This is going to be another episode in my series, Truth and Freedom. Can we please have a conversation? My guest today is Alec Zeck. I wanted to make sure I said Alec and not Alex.
It
and
happens all the time. It's all good.
he has the Way Forward podcast, which I've been following, and he's been doing some great work. He is one of the top leaders in the Truth and Freedom movement, and I am just so thankful and happy and honored to have him here with us today. Welcome, Alec. To
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for being my guest. I know you are right now in the middle of a 21-day water fast. I've done it for 3 days, and I know how good it is for your body to detox and cleanse out all the crazy toxins and chemicals that we've been bombarding with. But wow, first, like, how do you get through that? I mean, give me your secret.
Yeah, well, I'm on day 4 right now, and I've never done 21 days. I've only
Okay.
ever done 7 days.
Okay.
And I can say for this 7-day cleanse, it really forces you to go look within yourself, because you don't have as much distractions because you're having to conserve energy, and you want your energy to be directed at healing and cleansing your body. So because of that, you're sort of forced to look at some of the things in your life that you haven't dealt with internally and do a lot of inner work. And that's what I've been doing in the last 4 days so far. So I'm sure it'll get more intense.
Just don't pass out on me.
I won't
Don't
pass
pass
out. I
out
will
on
say when
me.
I stand up though, I do feel a little bit of weakness, and I just have to stand up kind of like a elderly person with high blood pressure. So I'm having to
Uh,
stand up and like hold on to a table for a minute after I've been sitting down for some time.
wow. Well, you have to keep me, we stay in touch on Telegram. So you have to keep me posted on how you're doing with that. But I'm so glad of what you just said, because what you just said about the inner work,
Mhm.
it's so important. That is what I launched my podcast 8 years ago, shortly after my son transitioned in 2014. And it was all inner guidance. Higher self told me, just do it. And that means start your podcast, just do it. And I was completely obedient. But what
Mhm.
you're talking about right now is so important, for humanity as a whole, to go within
Mhm.
and really tap into what your truth is and what resonates and what your purpose, because we all have a purpose here.
Mhm.
And when we tap into that soul purpose, which we can only do by going within, um it's life is complete my life has completely changed over the past 8 years, since I've been just basically walking in my truth and walking in my purpose. And it doesn't matter for me, because I've gotten a lot of backlash from friends and family. I had a friend when I first launched my show 8 years ago, said he was a very, staunch, traditional Christian. And he's like, I'm done with you. Seriously. We were good friends. He
Uh,
was like a brother to me. He's like,
wow.
I'm done. But that didn't stop me from
Not
being
very
me.
Christ-like.
Not very Christ-like at all. But I think because we were so close and I did look up to him as a big brother, I think he felt if he said that, I would stop
Mhm.
doing what I'm doing. But I'm
Uh,
like, I release you in love and light. And I've had to do, especially this year, I've had to do that to a lot of people. I have nothing but love for them, because I truly believe that we each on our soul path, on our soul journey, and we're exactly where we're supposed to be. But I'm
mm.
going to shut up. I want you to tell us about the way forward and what you've been doing the last few years.
Yeah, this is a good question because when you bring in the context of the last few years, so previous to the way forward, my primary focus was Health Freedom for Humanity, the organization that I was running. That was a health freedom nonprofit. And due to some unfortunate circumstances, we had to dissolve that organization because we didn't have enough money. That came about because our president at the time wrote a hit piece on Robert Malone in our newsletter, and then Robert Malone wrote a hit piece on us in his newsletter. And, that was a leadership failure on my part, because I should have had checks and balances in place to ensure something like that wasn't written in our newsletter. Because while I agree with most of what was written about Dr. Robert Malone, and I personally don't really trust his intentions, that's just not what the mission of our organization was. And what was posted in our newsletter was just enough false information about Robert Malone, namely that he was creating his own and so then his organization threatened to sue us for defamation, and wrote a hit piece on us, and our recurring donations dropped by 82% literally overnight. So since dissolving Health Freedom for Humanity in mid 2022, I have been focused. It's been somewhat of a blessing in disguise, because with Health Freedom for Humanity, I felt very trapped in focusing almost exclusively on and now with the way forward, I'm much more focused on consciousness, health freedom, and also sovereignty / liberty. And so kind of like the merger of all those two things. And I put out a lot of educational material, both obviously with the End of COVID project that I've just launched, but also with my podcast. And pretty much all of my conversations are very solutions focused. And that's not to say we don't cover some dark topics that are inherently dark, that are tough for people to face. But we focus primarily on solutions with respect to health, sovereignty, and consciousness, and kind of bridge the gap between all those things. And that's just an interesting point why I'm doing this water fast. So I had planned it before the David Martin interview that I just did, but that was really the culmination for me of realizing why it is I need to do the water fast. Because I have, in my approach to reality over the past year, just because I've been in such a go mentality after having dissolved Health Freedom for Humanity, because that was my source of income to provide for my wife and my 2 kids and myself. I have been too here and not enough here. And so I'm doing the water fast primarily to, it's not like I don't have any crazy physical ailments. It's mainly to reconnect with myself and reconnect with the creator.
Oh my God. We're here. I'm so in alignment with everything you just said. And as far as like what you're saying about sharing the dark, yeah, we have to shine the light on the dark. And the thing is, I know that it just takes a tiny bit of light to shine through all that darkness. So that's where I stay focused. I get it all the time. People say, Caroline, you're too up here, you're too high, you're too in the light. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to stay in the light, because I'm going to shine the light. I know the darkness is going on, but I'm not giving it my attention, meaning I'll share it, but I always because I'm also a journalist. I've been writing articles now for the past 3 or 4 months for AMP, which is an independent.
I've been on their show a few times discussing the End of COVID. I've been on a few different shows,
like okay.
4 different shows for AMP.
Awesome. Great. Soon I'll have my own show on AMP, but right now I'm just a journalist for AMP, and I keep every article I write where I'm showing here's what's going on in the darknet. I always end that article, but here's the solution. Like you said, I've always been solution oriented. It's not bad to show. I find, from my experience, a lot of people in this movement will give so much of their attention and energy to the dark, and they lower they're bringing their vibration, and they don't understand the importance of your vibration.
They're helping to co-create that reality too.
Exactly.
They understand the power of whoever they are, the elusive they, who no one can name exactly who they are. They understand the human psyche, and whether or not we understand the power of our consciousness and where we focus our attention and awareness, aligning our thoughts and feelings is not, it doesn't really matter, because they understand that. So for those in the health, freedom, truth movement, whatever you want to call this space, that are constantly focused on the darkness and what they're doing, you're actually helping to co-create that reality. And again, that's not to say that we shouldn't draw attention to it and shine a light on it, because that could be seen as a spiritual bypass if you're not willing to look at it.
Right.
And, that's the flip side of the spectrum. It's like over here, we have the new age community where everything is love and light, and you just don't even pretend that the darkness is there within yourself, also within the world. And then the other end of the spectrum is where you're perpetually focusing on it, and that's co-creating that reality. And the middle path is to shine a light on it, but to align our thoughts, feelings, and take deliberate action towards the future that we want.
So you said it so beautiful. And I say that message in my own way daily, because I'm on different groups and I'm always encouraging them to shine a light on it. It's not, my head is not in the sand. I know exactly what's going on. I'm not giving them my power. I'm not feeding, because what they feed off of is low vibration. They feed off of fear. They feed off of anger. They feed off of hate. That is their food. And they don't care that you're low vibration because you hate them. They're like, yeah, hate me all you want, because that low vibration is feeding us, is making us stronger. And I've been teaching this long before COVID, that it's the power of our thoughts. We are creator beings, and we're creating our reality, and it's been proven scientifically, because it was quantum physics that gave me my awakening. My spiritual awakening comes from quantum physics, and that happened in 2007. And my awakening to the powers that should not be came in 2012, after I saw with my own eyes every word they said about 9/11 was a lie. Every single word.
Yeah.
And you just have to have eyes. A blind man could see that. So I was like, okay, now, so I'm thankful, because I first awoken in 2007 spiritually, and it was science that woke me up to who I am spiritually. And then in 2012, my higher self said, now look and see what actually happened on 9/11, on the anniversary of 9/11. Wow. So I was like, okay, I get you, David Icke. The worst thing, I was listening to David Icke before I had that awakening, and I was like, what is, interesting. What's he talking about? After I saw, okay, David Icke, I'm Crystal. And as soon as the whole, in early 2020, as soon as all this, I stopped watching news. I have not watched a second of mainstream news since September 2001, when my higher self said, turn it off. Don't ever watch it again. I had no idea why. I was just obedient. But then found out why in 2012. But I knew in March of 2020, actually it was before, because my first video I did about this was February of 2020, before March. I said, don't allow the news to put you in a state of fear. That's all they want. They just want, and I'm like, what are they doing now? But yes, please share about, yes, the end of COVID. And I discovered the work of Dr. Andy Kaufman, who he lives about 2 hours from me in upstate New York. But I discovered his work early in like April of 2020, been following him. And yeah, so share what the end of COVID was all about, because it is great.
Yeah, so the reason that we came together to create the end of COVID was because around the end of 2022, we saw that the mainstream media was starting to more frequently share this idea that a virus escaped from a lab, or was accidentally released from a lab, or whatever the narrative is. And at that time, what appeared to be happening was that the alternative people who had been censored, some of the most loud, most well-known alternative voices who had been censored for speaking about gain of function, appeared to have been vindicated by the mainstream media, the FBI, talking about a lab-made virus. So, it was very clear then that they're closing the book soon on this. And while they're closing the book on this whole charade of the last 3 years, the alternative community overwhelmingly is still latching on to some very fundamental fear-based pseudoscientific conditioned beliefs surrounding how disease manifests and, virology. And of course, one of those is this idea that a virus escaped from a lab. And when looking at the germ paradigm, I hesitate to call it a theory because it's not even a proper scientific theory. When looking at the germ paradigm, you're especially when it comes to virology, there's two different narratives that people latch onto. It's either that, for example, for SARS-CoV-2, it was a zoonotic, naturally occurring virus that jumped from a bat to a pangolin to a woman eating bat soup, whatever the story is, or it's a lab-made virus. And it's a false dilemma because there is a third option. And when within that germ paradigm, though, within those two false dilemmas, or within that false dilemma, the one that the alternative community is latching onto is the more fear-based one, because what sounds more scary and has scarier implications for the future? The idea that in a one in a gazillion natural occurrence, a virus jumped from a bat to a pangolin to a lady eating bat soup and then it spread around the world, or the idea that they're taking the naturally occurring version of that, weaponizing it in a lab to make it more lethal and pathogenic. And of course, the answer is the second one sounds much scarier, but the reality is neither of the two are true whatsoever. There's no proof, there's no scientific evidence behind either of the two. Right. And unfortunately, the alternative community is latching on to the latter. And I think that latching on to that narrative amongst several other narratives, which we also covered during the end of COVID, will inevitably allow a situation like this to continue in the future. So the end of COVID covers every single detail of the last 3.5 years, answering all the, well, what about this? What about that questions that we could possibly think of, right, to give everyone all the context in it's easy to digest, but there is a lot of content, I will say that, but in an easy to digest way so that we can ensure we're properly informed on what health looks like, where freedom comes from, what disease is, what symptoms of illness are, et cetera, so that nothing like this happens again in the future.
I agree with you 1,000% there, because what I was saying back in February of 2020, before the plandemic, is don't allow them to put you in a state of fear. And what you're saying is the alternative population, the alternative collective, is now latching on to a fear-based paradigm, and when you wake up to who you are, you understand that it is your energy, is your vibration that will get you ill. Meaning, if you are just spreading love and light and surrounding yourself with love and light, nothing can touch you. I know and I explain it in a very simple layman's term. I'm not a PhD, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. Just listening to this, I got from Andy when I first listened to him back in April of 2020. The isolation process. If you want to isolate something, you don't add to it, you subtract from it. Yeah. And that simple common sense that what they're doing, the whole field of virology, is a scam. Okay, very simple. They're
scamming themselves though too, because it's not that there's this like all virologists are in on this grand scheme to mislead us or anything like that. It's just that they've been taught this procedure to, quote, isolate viruses, and they accept that as a well-established fact that that's how we isolate viruses, and the effect that they're seeing, the cytopathic effect, the resultant particles, these are viruses. And then we sequence this within the process of assembling a genome, et cetera, and then we're off to the races. So it's not that they're all in on it by any means.
Oh, no, I agree with you 1,000%. I don't think all the doctors and nurses that have been harming people for eons, not just the last 3 years.
Well, I figured it was important to bring that up, though, too, because not because you were saying that, but many people seem to think that for some reason. And even much of the health freedom movement, who still believes in the germ paradigm, will ask, well, are you saying all virologists are in it? And just as you said, well, my response is always, well, do you think all doctors who are And of course, their answer is no. And it's like, exactly, they're just taught to accept this at face value.
Exactly, exactly. They've been taught all through their medical career, and you know, it is a dogma. It is no different than a religion, basically.
Exactly.
No
It
different.
is.
And I did pick up on when David was saying that,
Yeah.
and I picked up on when he was saying it, because I honestly, I can tell you two people as example, and both, one is a relative of mine, one is a very good friend of mine. My good friend never had her, she knew long about, her daughter's 23 years old. She knew long, she homeschooled her daughter from birth, never got her daughter vaccination. I've known this lady since like 2005, but I didn't even question, because my children were already grown, so I was past that stage. I didn't learn about, because then I did my own homework. I'm like, okay, I know what they're after. Let me start doing my own homework. So this lady that was way ahead of me, when, as far as the germ there, she was double masking. She was so, she, of course, she didn't go near, but she believed, so I was like, there is no virus. There is no virus. So this is someone that she just, and another, my cousin, who is completely holistic, believes in natural healing. She knows about the whole scam of big pharma, but she won't accept, no, there's no virus. So I understand exactly what you're saying. It becomes a religion.
Yeah.
You know, with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I have some comments on that too,
yeah,
because there are a lot of people in the health freedom space that we're becoming increasingly frustrated with who won't accept this paradigm. And, I'll own my own stuff, for lack of a better term. My performance in the interview with David Martin, I came into that with a preconceived notion that he was misleading people, whether intentionally or not, and that a little bit of frustration. And that came out in the interview. And I have already apologized on my Telegram channel publicly. I did not perform well in that interview. And I will also say that I think for the first half of that interview, I did perform well, but the second half, because I started reading the live comments, because it was recorded live, which
yes.
was a horrible mistake, especially as I have, as I've said, not been clear in my center, and I've been too in my mind. And being in my mind comes with a lot of like worry and anxiety, and even worrying about what other people think of me. There's a subset of the so-called no virus crowd that have become extremely combative, and I've, in a weird way, sort of looked to them as part of my community, part of our like larger no virus community. So I was already, from some of these accounts, already tried to cancel the end of COVID, because I featured several doctors who were not fully on board with the no virus position that did have something to offer that ironically helped to reinforce the no virus position. As an example,
Oh,
Nick Hudson, who's not fully on board with the no virus position, gave two presentations during the end of COVID, one comparing the health measures around the world, and then one looking at the mortality data around the world. And those help reinforce the no virus position, while, of course, he is not on board with the no virus position himself. Sorry, I got to take a drink of water, then I'll finish
that's
the
okay.
thought.
Of course, of course.
Water
You
fast.
better drink water, because that's all you're drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a sip with
Okay.
you too.
So with that, like I said, the end of COVID has, there's been several of these no virus accounts, some larger, some smaller, that have tried to cancel the end of COVID, because they're like, oh, they're going to mislead people. They're including any people that aren't fully on board with no virus, which is just an absurd idea. That people who are not fully on board with the no virus position, can they not have great things to say elsewhere? Yeah, maybe they aren't fully on board with this. Maybe they're misled themselves. Maybe they have too much cognitive dissonance. Maybe they came from the field of virology. There's a number of things. Maybe they witnessed someone around them become extremely ill, and they believe that it was caused by a viral disease, and it's just too hard for them to look at that. There are several reasons why people don't come to this position. And building off of that scenario where I was, had the end of COVID essentially canceled, tried to be canceled by these people. A lot of those same people were in the live chat when I was interviewing David Martin, and they were, commenting things like, don't allow him to step on your toes. You're letting him dictate the whole interview. So that's when I started becoming more combative.
Yeah, I
And I
see.
wish I just hadn't read the comments, but all it's showing me is that I have more work to do on myself. That's it. And that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing now. So all that to say, the reason I bring this up is because I've seen increasing frustration and othering of anyone else who is not fully on board with the no virus position. And if we're wanting to invite people into this understanding, there's a couple things. We have to approach people with kindness and compassion. And I think, given the nature of communication on social media, because it's hard to tell someone's tone, I will say direct communication that is not, malicious or not using ad hominems or anything like that can, in this day and age, unfortunately, come across as combative. So I think if we're wanting to help people understand this paradigm, we're needing to approach them with kindness and compassion. And the second thing is, we have to remember that this paradigm is entrenched into virtually every health paradigm, including all of the holistic ones for the most part.
Yeah.
99.9999% of people in the world, that's not an accurate number, I'd say,
Right.
but believe in the germ paradigm and their environments through the creation of the mind, one, and then two, through just, objective, or I guess subjective experience, irrespective of the conditions of the mind, sometimes lend credence to the idea that there is something being spread from person to person. Like, I'm a father of 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
My kids tend to get sick at the exact same time. And then sometimes one of us will get sick, my wife or I. And without the understanding and having dived deep into the problems with the germ paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
that sure looks like a virus is being passed, especially when that is the sentiments that's shared amongst all of society. So we have to remember that the focusing on isolation for most people who are not, who are emotional thinkers rather than logical thinkers, that won't be enough, because they'll be like, oh, I don't care that there's no virus isolated because my direct experience shows me contagion is real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have to be able to first communicate what other plausible explanations for what's going on. Of course, we present those extensively during the end of COVID, incorporating water, the human biofield, our thoughts, the combination of all those things. But we also need to remember that this paradigm is hard to break through for a lot of people. And if you're a person listening to this that has broken through it, you're a really, really deep thinker. That's amazing. That's awesome. But there are other people out there who are not as deep of thinkers and who may have too much cognitive dissonance and all the other things that I named earlier. And we just have to remember that. Now, the exception that I will make to this statement, and I'm learning to dissolve the frustration associated with it, though, is if you're running a health freedom organization whose entire premise, and your mission statement is to raise awareness to the harms of the pharmaceutical industry and to shed light on pseudoscience and show people the truth about science, et cetera, et cetera. If at this point in time you're refusing to touch on this, that's a big red flag for me. Especially if you're refusing to touch this, but then consistently pumping gain of function narratives on your platform.
Right.
Because some of these organizations, which I'm happy to name, ICANN and CHD.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Like,
go ahead.
Before you go there, because I want to piggyback on what you said before about people's personal experience. I want to share one with you and your audience and everybody listening. And this just happened a few months ago to me, the end of 2022. I was a speaker at a conference. And at that conference, I always share a room to help with expenses. So I was sharing a room with this lady, and this lady, you would think, I mean, when she first walked in the door, she was like, she was coughing up a lung. And she's like, I'm so sorry, I don't want to get you. And I moment she said that, I said, I am not getting sick. I told myself, I never said this to her. I told myself, I'm not getting sick. Okay, now she during this whole 5-day conference, and she's managing the bookstore, and everybody's complaining about this. Like she kept, first of all, she snored like a bear. Couldn't get any sleep. She all the I'm in the room with her. Okay, and so many people at the conference was complaining about her and how her call, and they, we're still living in the COVID era. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't believe in COVID. As soon as she walked in the door, she's like, oh, my husband, she was on the phone with her husband. Oh, my husband's like, oh, Caroline, we're so worried about you getting sick and blah, blah, blah. And that's when I said to her, oh, calm you and your husband have nothing to fear. I am not going to get sick. Okay. Now I get home a week later, people are calling me up. I got sick from so and so. I got sick from, I didn't get a thing. It is mind over matter.
100%.
Okay. It is completely mind. I'm in the room. You guys just ran into her in the hallway. I'm in the room with this woman. I did not get sick at all. And I told myself, I will not get sick. And I told myself I will not get sick. I did not get sick. It is mind over matter. I wanted to share that. But now you're going to go into something else I'm going to piggyback on, because I agree with you 1,000%. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, to share a quick point that sort of reinforces what you just said. So this data point comes directly from the CDC's own data. And of course, I don't trust the CDC, but this data is pretty objective. I've read the study through and through. So, and of course, you'd have to hold psych diagnoses to be true in this respect, but still, this is relevant. According to a study published by the CDC that was published in July of 2021, studied 540,000 people who had been admitted to the hospital and were given a nonsensical PCR test and diagnosed with, quote, COVID, right? Which is nonsense, but nonetheless, the label, right? Found that the second strongest risk factor for death associated with that label, COVID, was fear/anxiety related disorders. Yeah. What does that tell you about the mind?
Yes.
And there's countless.
How powerful the mind is. Yes.
Yeah. And then of course there's countless studies showing the placebo nocebo effect has consistent measurable results too. So with that being said, to go to this other topic, the CHD ICANN thing, I'm able to, I do understand that for some, the no virus perspective could be seen as akin to like Holocaust denialism or something like that, like just so fringe of a topic. But at this point that's when approaching the public, right? Like that, of course, to people who are fully bought into this stuff, when you share there is no virus, they think you're absolutely crazy because there's too many layers that they would still have to go through. Like they're not even on approaching the public. Right. I can understand the position, understand why it's not important, or it wouldn't be worthwhile to cover this topic. But with that being said, the overwhelming majority, I would say virtually all of the audience for both ICANN and Children's Health Defense is already in the health freedom movement, right? And their refusal to cover this topic is a little bit of a catch-22, because they've both been quoted as saying something to the effect of, this topic is not a well-established or well-accepted topic amongst the health freedom movement. But the ironic thing is, those two organizations have by far the largest platforms in the health freedom movement, and they refuse to cover this topic, thus creating a scenario where it's not a well-established, well-recognized viewpoint amongst the health freedom movement. So it's quite the catch-22. Yes. And the other thing is, we're not talking about Dell and Bobby speaking on what they want to speak on in their own private capacity. Exactly. We're talking about two men who run organizations whose entire basis is health really freedom. For lack health freedom. Exactly. Yes. And really centered on the quote need for safe vaccines that they keep parroting.
Safer poison. Go ahead. Go ahead.
is a
Yeah, give me some safer poison. Yeah. Okay.
I
Tell the truth
gotta
like
calm
it
down
is.
or I'm gonna pass out. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, no, I'm telling you, I knew where you were going, and
Yeah,
I'm there. I've written articles. I'm
yeah.
there. I'm there. Yes.
It's such an absurd idea, because when you look at the alleged evidence that gives way, which their whole organizations, really, let's be honest, they're based on point. Yes, children health defense touches on some other things, but that's all they talk. And the
Right.
entire basis program that these two organizations focus literally all of their content on, and all of their activism,
Yes.
is based in the pseudoscience of virology. That's what it's based in. And they refuse to touch this topic. And look, I don't think any of us are asking them to take a stance on it. Like, I understand the position that they're in, right? I understand that. But they have essentially taken a position on it
Yes.
by constantly pumping gain of function, absent of having a conversation on the pseudoscience of virology and the lack of proof that disease is spread via the fluids of a sick person.
Yes.
So I look at the mission statements of their organization. I wrote this in an article a few months, like 6 months ago, and it has a little over 40,000 views now, which is incredible. The mission statements of their organizations really create a situation that they are all basically required at this point to talk on this topic, to at least touch on it. And yes, I understand that Andy Kaufman was on ICANN, or on the High Wire rather,
Once.
Once very early on.
When Dell's arm was being twisted.
Yes,
he
exactly.
Even says that in the beginning.
He does,
He even
exactly.
says that.
The only reason he brought,
I got Andy because they're twisting my arm.
You're the most the most highly requested doctor,
Yes.
and like he had no choice at that point.
Yes.
And it's interesting because Dell brought up this excuse roughly 5 months ago, and I think it was in large part in response to my article, and then myself, Tom, and Andy
Me too. I was nudging Dell the whole
I think
time.
a lot of us, honestly,
Yes.
a lot of us, like
Yes.
they were really nudging him. And then he said on this video, I don't know if you saw that, there's this small group out there of the terrain people, and he essentially said that by us focusing on the no virus position, we're allowing the bad actors to walk off scot-free. And we're talking about how we're just about to indict Fauci, and it really is like a quasi QAnon narrative. Like, we're just about to get them. We're just about to get the bad actors. We're almost there. Just keep trusting the plan.
Oh, yeah.
Just like,
stay at home, sit in fear, and trust the plan.
Yeah, just trust the, yeah.
Okay.
That's what it comes across as to me. This just like a newer version of the QAnon narrative. Just trust the plan. We're going to get these guys. And that's what Tom said on one of his videos too. We're going to get these guys. Just you wait. And even if we get Fauci, even if we indict Fauci, does that change the nature of the system? Does that change the idea that it's all based in pseudoscience, that our entire approach for how we look at the human body and health is completely flawed, and that the entire only inefficacious and unsafe? It's entirely irrelevant because there's no proof of the alleged cause in the first place. So this just, like, his narrative that by focusing on the no virus thing allows these people to walk off scot-free is absurd, especially when you look at Stefan Lanka's measles case in Germany, and then Marvin Haberlin's recent case. Both of them use the no virus position to win in court. So this idea that you can't win in court with that is absurd.
A guy in Canada.
And a guy in Canada. I remember. I think he was in Ontario or Quebec. I don't remember. Yeah.
I saw him on the Stu Peters show. And the guy in Canada, which was several years ago, where he won in court because he's like, show me the virus. There's an organization. I have a good friend in South Africa. There's an organization in South Africa called Show Us the Virus. But back to, I had to say, don't discount me with Dell, because
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. No, because Dell was a guest on my show back. I mean, when I first discovered the highway, I said, Dell, come on. And he was, we're talking about April or May of 2020. And I'm like, at that time, I'm new. I'm like just starting to do my homework. Okay. But I like, Dell, please have, and I don't like the word debate. Have a conversation between all, you're the best platform to do this. Host a conversation between the no virus camp and, take 4 or 5 of the no virus guys and take 4 or 5 of the virus guys. Have a conversation. Doesn't have to turn into a debate, but have the conversation. Now, here's where I'm going to say, and I'm going to call a spade a spade. Hypocritical, hypocrite. Yeah, big tree. And I'm calling a spade because you always hear him say he talks about this, about the pro-vax and anti-vax should have this discussion, and how they set it all up, and the whole pro-vax people never came, and we're all in high wires, all about honesty, all about transparency. I hear it over and over again. I want to throw up. Because what about the transparency and the honesty about the vax and no vax conversation? You can say it about I'm sorry. About,
I know you meant the virus, no virus.
The virus and no virus conversation. You can say it about the vax and pro-vax conversation, but you can't say the same thing about the other conversation. And to me, the other conversation comes before, because if it turns out that we're all right, there is no viruses to be vaccinated against. You don't need
then that conversation's irrelevant.
The whole vax conversation goes out the window. So you're putting the horse before the cart before the horse.
Yeah, okay? Exactly.
A horse is
missing the forest for the trees. You could put an endless amount of analogies for that.
Exactly. So I'm calling you out in public. You are a hypocrite, Del Bigtree. And every time, and I listen to you because I'm a journalist, but you're a hypocrite.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think I can't even tune into his program anymore. And I used to watch his program at the beginning of this whole charade religiously, and before COVID, I watched it quite a bit, and I literally cannot tune into any of his content or any of CHD's content, because it's honestly at this point no better than the mainstream media in some ways, because they're not focusing on the real truth. And
exactly.
I'm not saying that the no virus camp has the real truth and the other ones don't. But the reality is, when you look at the science attempting to prove that diseases pass via the fluids of a sick person, without even going into the isolation of viruses and stuff like that, just looking at the idea that diseases spread via the fluids of a sick person, you find in the countless experimental attempts to do so, they were unable to show that diseases pass via the fluids of a sick person. Yes. And really interesting, in one of the experiments, there was a placebo group that was exposed to saline placebo, whereas other people were exposed to the fluids of a sick person, and more people became sick as a result of the saline placebo than those who were exposed to the so-called viral fluids of a sick person, which again goes back to showing how the mind is so important. And when we realize the importance of the mind, when we're latched onto this gain of function belief, we're inciting more unnecessary fear. And then what we will do, just like was done through COVID, is we will literally create that reality. Where what I mean by that is, for those who I want to clarify for the viewers. I know you get what I'm, but for COVID, those that were tuned in to the black rectangular boxes in our home, the phones, the computers, the TV, and watching that reality that was conjured up, that was created, right? Like a completely false reality that was created and projected to us on these screens. When that is done in mass, we will literally create, whether it be a thought form of that reality creating, or at the very least, a situation within ourselves where we are bringing about symptoms as if that thing was actually real. And especially if we turn to our left and right, and everyone else around us is doing the same thing, despite that thing, that situation not actually occurring in reality, everyone behaves as if it is. Yeah. And then because of the placebo-nocebo effect, we experience real symptoms as a result of that conditioned paradigm, that conditioned belief, which is, again, why it's so important to shed light on the problems of virology in general, but especially gain of function at this point in time. And during the end of COVID, Doctors Mark and Sam Bailey have a fantastic presentation going into great detail on the pseudoscience and the unproven nature of gain of function experiments.
Yes.
And it's just, it's frustrating, but that's kind of why we created the End of COVID. Like I said, is like, okay, it's clear at this point, they're not going to cover it, Bobby
Right.
and Dell. So
Exactly.
we're just all going to come together and push forward this and show
Yes.
that we're all united together to show
Yes.
that there is no proof of this.
Yes. And it's so true. I mean, you and I were like simpatico here. But it's so true. Not that we individually and collectively, we create our reality from our mindset and our programming. And that's why it's called television programming. You're being programmed every time you watch that stupid box.
Live vision programming.
Yes, live vision program. But it's the thing, and you're absolutely right about us approaching those that can't. Like I said, I have two people in my life that are completely holistic, but they don't want to hear the no virus argument, so you gotta approach it with kindness, because first of all, when we approach things with kindness and love, we get much better. You catch more flies with honey than you ever do with vinegar.
100%.
Always. But the thing about, I know that I've been writing about it for weeks, the hypocrisy of the ICANN, and even Bobby, did kind of even reach out when my daughter passed 7 months ago from because she was forced to take an MMR booster at 17. Now the MMR boosters are supposed to give a child is supposed to get between 4 and 6 before they enter school. Now, both my kids, and this is all, I'm not psychic or anything. I have a strong connection to higher self. My higher self, so this is back in the mid 80s, early 80s, actually. Mid 80s when they were going into school. But anyway, my higher self told me, kids don't need any more shots. That's it. I mean, I didn't have any information. All I know, they had their baby shots. And back then, and my daughter
It was like 5.
Huh?
It was like 5 by 12 months of age or
Yeah,
something like that.
my daughter was born in 1980 and my son was born in 84. So it wasn't that many. They had their baby shots to roll. I enrolled them in school, in Catholic school in Jersey, which was, in Catholic school, it was easier to get away with that because they just didn't really check that hard. So my kids, my son never went to college, didn't have a desire to go to college. My daughter did. And at 17, they looked at her record, her vaccine, and they made her get the shots that she was supposed to get at 4 or 5. And 3 years later, she was diagnosed with MS. I didn't find out until, so that was in 2003 when she was diagnosed with MS. She was 23 years old. And I didn't find out until 2020 what caused that MS. And it was the MMR that she was made to take at 17, which when you think, that's not even the age she was supposed to get it. So, and she passed from that illness 7 months ago. So I did reach out to, not ICANN, but the Bobby's organization, and got in contact with a few people. And Bobby because my thing was, I'm not interested in suing for money. I want, okay, here are my simple solutions. Okay, my simple solution is repeal that illegal, unconstitutional 1986 acts. Once the pharmaceutical companies are made to be held responsible, they on their own will, because they will go under. They will do it. That's all. Stop giving them a pass to kill people.
And that's it. And that's what they're doing, giving them a pass to kill people. 100%.
Yeah, let's stop giving. And so in the meantime, in between time, because we can't wait on the government, the corrupt government, inside and out. I don't care what left, right. 100%. I don't even know what left, right means. I don't care. It's completely corrupt. I mean, if you have one honest judge, you got like 20 dishonest judges. Forget it. We, the people, cannot ask the criminals for permission to be free. Then 100%. Our jailer is not going to give us the key. We, 99% of us, have to say no. So so my thing now is to educate parents, educate the public in general about how dangerous. And you just say, pull your kid out of school. Do not give your kids that. And so until the government, which corrupt government that gave the pharmaceutical company permission to kill your children, until that corrupt government takes that law out of circulation, repeals that law, we, the people, have to do it.
100%. Yeah. I've said this pretty often too, is that at this point in time, the idea that the government has our best interest in mind on either side of the spectrum, and I don't think there actually is a spectrum. I think it's a false illusion of a spectrum to keep us constantly bickering and fighting amongst each other. At this point in time, there's no solution to be found within government, at least at the federal level. Now, I understand that there is nuance there when it comes to like state and local elections and politics and things like that. But irrespective of that, I've been focusing a lot of my content on what I call the illusion of authority. And it's the idea that men and women who call themselves government have the right to dictate, to give orders and issue commands with the threat or use of force for those who don't comply is absolutely absurd. And it's all based in a conditioned belief, because we have to understand that when it comes to the tippy top of the government, there's only a few select people. And the unfortunate reality is there's a lot of agents of the government who buy into the illusion of authority as well, who believe that they're, just quote, following orders. And then unfortunately, there's a much larger group of people, even if you just took the health freedom movement as an example, who, whether they disagree with the flavor or the approach or the application of authority, they still hold at some fundamental level this belief that other men and women who call themselves government have a right to tell other peaceful people what to do. And it's an absurd conditioned belief. And the moment that the health freedom movement wakes up to this, and which doesn't require belligerence, doesn't require hostility, you don't need to go like punch a cop or anything like that. It just requires you say, no, thank you.
It requires is no. I will not comply. No.
Yeah.
That's
I
all
love the way you say no.
Yes.
No.
No. No. And it is peaceful. We must. This is going back to consciousness and knowing who we are. We must come from a peaceful place, because they have the monopoly on violence. Okay. Which is a very low frequency. It's all about frequency. And peace and love is extremely, this has been proven scientifically that a high vibration of peace and love is 10,000 times more powerful than the low frequency of fear and hate. And this, see, a lot, the human condition, it's hard for us. We can't see, because we can't see energy. We can't see vibration. But I learned in 7th grade.
You can feel it though.
Right. I learned in 7th grade, we do not live in a solid universe. We do not live in a solid world. And we were all taught that in 7th grade when we were taught about atoms. Atoms they're not solid. Even they say an atom is the building blocks of all matter, but even
that's theoretical too.
Yes,
I know. It's all waves.
I heard you talk about that with David. I know. Okay. I caught that. And I was like, okay, but
I get the point you're making.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Let me make my point? Thank you. But even the building blocks of matter, which we say atoms are the building, even that has been shown to be 99.9999% empty space. Meaning, the point I'm making is that with our 5 human senses, now this is what science says. Again, I don't know if these figures are right, but science says with our 5 human senses, we as human beings can detect 0.0535% of what is actually around us, meaning with our eye, you know what I'm saying? So if you're saying you only believe in what you can sense with your 5 senses, that means you're ignoring 99.96% of what is actually happening. So that's why I say, we can't see how our energy affects. But when we understand that light from the scientific perspective is so high, love and peace is so much more powerful than hate and fear. So no, don't go out there and punch a cop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing is there's a lot of people who are, I consider myself a voluntarist or an anarcho-capitalist, and it's funny because I actually was part of the government at one point. I was an officer in the army, so that's the funny part. I don't know of any other West Point graduate who has come to the position that I have, and if there's any out there that listen to this, hit me up. But it's interesting though, because there's a lot of people who are talking about like, oh, like punch, like not punch a cop, but like we need to like hang these criminals in the streets. And I'm like, no, that's not the right approach in my opinion.
No.
Do and this is coming from a belief of mine. Do I have proof of this? No, but I believe it, that for those who frequently impose and infringe upon others and do these insanely wicked acts, there's karmic debt that they're accumulating that they will have to face in their life. And that's a belief of mine. Can I
Yes, yes,
prove
yes.
that? No, I can't prove that, but I believe that. And I've seen karma play out in reality quite a bit.
Right.
So I think that what we as the health freedom movement need to focus on is first, again, approaching everything with love and compassion, doing the inner work, healing our own stuff. Because I see a lot of people who are so focused on what they are doing because they don't want to have to deal with what's inside of them that is actually creating the conditions where they are so focused on what they're doing. Because when, as I've been, in my life have done inner work quite a bit. And over the last year, like I acknowledged, I've been neglecting that inner work.
Right.
I realized that all of this stuff, all of this minutia out there is not as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be. The only reason it's a big deal is because I'm continuing to focus my attention and awareness on it, absent of creating a better life for myself and my family and my community.
I agree with you 1,000%. And so I will share my belief, which I say is a knowing. And then I say it's a knowing for me. It doesn't have to be a knowing for anybody else. It's a knowing for me because it comes from inside. When I say that, like I was told, I was yelled at from the inside. And right after 9/11, turn off that news and don't ever turn it back on. This is 2001. I had no clue why. I was obedient. So when something comes like that from inside my heart and soul, I know where it's coming from. It's coming from a higher source. It's coming from all that is. And what I say is everybody on this blue globe is exactly where they're supposed to be and doing exactly what they're supposed to be. Even the bad actors. The bad actors are playing their role perfectly. Because
Yep.
we live, this is again from my inner knowing, we live hundreds and thousands of lifetimes and we change roles. Right now, you and I, we picked roles of the light for this lifetime, but there are lifetimes where we were playing the role of the bad
100%.
guy. Okay.
We had to work off that karmic debt over lifetimes.
Yes,
That's what I
it's
think
all,
too.
and to me, karma is balance. That's all it is. Okay, we played a certain role in a lifetime. Then when we go back to spirit, we're like, okay, oh, I messed up. I need to go back and fix that. And it's us doing it to us saying, I want to go back and fix it. And karma, because the universe is balanced. And that's what karma is. And yes, what they put out into the universe will come back to them. Yes.
100%. But this is such an important point. I made this post like 2 years ago. I said, thank you, COVID. Thank you, Fauci. Thank you, Klaus Schwab. Thank you, all of it. Because if I hadn't experienced, if this thing didn't happen, right? If this thing didn't happen, I would possibly still, be an army officer, or at the very least be working a job in the corporate world. Because at the time, and they stopped doing this because of COVID, but at the time I had a religious accommodation to shots for vaccines or vaccines in the army. And I was looking at working a non-combat related job. So I was like, you know what? I can justify staying in this corrupt organization. And I know the truth about 9/11 and all these things, just as long as I don't work a combat related job where I'm directly causing harm to people, but I'm still part of the system that is. But, and those were the concessions I was making in my mind. And like, I didn't have a sense of purpose or direction. I was just kind of like going about life. But I'd done a lot of childhood trauma healing and inner work from 2018 through 2019. So I kind of had a lingering feeling that I wanted to leave the army, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had literally no clue at all. and that's where I was making those concessions in my mind, like, oh, well, I could work a non-combat related job and you stay in. And then this situation happened, which was very dark, very traumatic, but it acted as a catalyst for those who were willing to use it as such, for me to propel myself into better action, into becoming a better man, into becoming a better husband, and becoming a better father, into living my purpose and helping other people see through the illusions. And this could have never happened had those bad actors not done what they did. So in a weird way, thank God for them.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
thank goodness for them.
I tell you something? The
Mhm.
past 3 years, and I made this video 2.5 years ago. I made a thank you video. I've been saying in all my presentations for the last 3 years, the greatest blessing to humanity was the pandemic. And I was told in March of 20, I can tell you the date. It was actually March 21st, 2020. March 20, my higher self said, the humanity's great awakening has begun. The beginning to humanity's great awakening was the pandemic in March of 2020. And it is the greatest blessing, not just for you, but for all of humanity. Think of this. Okay. For water to become steam, what has to happen?
Has to heat up and be
It has to
with pressure too.
boil.
Yeah.
It has to be, so it has to boil. Humanity is at that boiling point. So many people have awakened to some kind of truth in the past 3 years. They could never pull off what they pulled off in March of 2020. They could not pull off today. Impossible.
No
Too
way.
many people are awake. But something had to happen to wake up humanity. What better than a fake pandemic?
Yeah.
What better? Something had to happen to wake up humanity. And the greatest blessing to humanity is that plandemic. I call it a plandemic, scamdemic, shamdemic. Had to happen. Needed it. Yep.
Well, for those that were willing, again, to use it as a catalyst, it forced a lot of us to look within inside ourselves and pause and reflect on, what am I doing in my life? Like, what fears inside myself are allowing me to be swayed by what's going on in my external environment? And other things too, like coming to understand the importance of community and the importance of hugging and being around each other, and sharing food with each other, and living in community with each other. And there is so many beautiful things that came out of this situation. And like, for me, I lost a lot of my friends at the very beginning of this whole situation, as did many people, right?
Yes.
And in that time, though, I've developed some of the best, deepest relationships that I've ever had. And the friends that I've found because of this, they're lifelong friends now. And one that I really connected with in the beginning of 2021, I ended up being a groomsman in his wedding. And it's like, it's beautiful. It's beautiful if we look at it that way. It's propelling us into action to create the lives that we want.
Yes, very, very true. And living your life from your soul purpose, because we each have a soul purpose. We all have a unique piece of this puzzle that only each of us came here to do. So no one else could do what you came here to do. No one else can do what I came here to do. I do believe, because even in my podcast that I launched 8 years ago, long before the plandemic, scamdemic, shamdemic, it was all about unity and bringing us together. Now, that one of the biggest, other than keeping the masses in a state of fear, the other thing, the powers that shouldn't be, and I got that from Sam, the powers that shouldn't be want is us divided and bickering among each other. That's kind of why, and I want to apologize to you and David, because I didn't even finish watching the video. Like, guys, stop it. Because to me, you guys were giving the globalists exactly what they want. And that is for us to be butting heads with each other, when we truly are we're not clones of each other, but we're on the same page. And
Yeah,
when
100%.
and it's 99% of us on that same page. It's
Yeah.
that 1% that decided to play bad actors in this lifetime. That's just 1%. They want to keep the 99% divided, and we have to come together. Love, peace, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter your politics, doesn't matter anything. We have to come together in love and peace and say, no, we will not comply. Now, I don't know why this phone is
It's all good. It happens.
okay, but that's okay. Go ahead. Okay.
So yeah, the thing that I'll say with that is, again, to reemphasize, I could have done much better in that interview. I will still say this though. I find David's public statements to be extremely misleading for those who are not acutely aware that there is no virus, right?
Right,
For
right.
those who are aware that there is no virus, we can clue into when he says virus model, right? When he says the word model,
Right.
and understand what he's saying. But the overwhelming majority of the audience that, you know, I don't know if his intention is to impact this audience, because he has clarified that like his thing is purely on the legal fronts. And I understand that now. That was important for him to have clarified that for me. But it's an unfortunate situation where the overwhelming majority of the health freedom movement is using his statements, his public statements, to reinforce the idea that there was a pathogenic virus being passed from person to person, when David, as he clarified on that interview, does not think that at all. And gain of function was purely to derive sequences from a synthetic, the in silico genome to create the shot. And with that being said, though, I completely agree with you. Like, David and I agree on pretty much everything. Like, really, we do. Just the only difference is disagreeing on the approach to, but we have different missions. Like mine, people have pointed this out to me, and there's been comments across the board. Some have said I did an awful job and David danced around me. And then some said that David was trying to obfuscate and not directly answer the question. Some said that I was belligerent and interrupting him. Some said he was belligerent and interrupting me. And it really is like, if you just go to my Telegram channel and look at the comments, it's like, it's so interesting to see just the landscape of different perceptions.
And you saw mine. You saw my comment. I was like, stop. And I was like, stop it. You both are on the same page. Don't let people divide you. That was me.
And I can see where he's coming from on like, he's approaching this in a legal way. And I don't know if, I wish I would have asked this. Is your audience then the general public? Because if so, I could see possibly where you're coming from. But I will say that I think he needs to continue to make more clarifying statements that, hey, I don't think there is a virus being passed from person to person. Maybe not in those public, that public commentary, but like when he's talking to the health freedom community, I think he needs to be very clear. And that's what I think, but that doesn't mean that's what he has to do.
I totally hear what you're saying, because other people, my friend in South Africa, she was like, so actually she and I was just having the exact same conversation that you were having, where I was saying, but I see both clearly. I see what David is saying clearly. I see what you were saying clearly. And like I said, that's why I brought up that piece, that we are each here with a unique purpose. Nobody can do what David came here to do. Nobody can do what Alec came here to do. Nobody can do what I came here to do. That's why I really do. I'm glad you said yes. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping David says yes, because I feel that my mission is to bring us together. And
it'd be a great conversation. I'd really love to do that.
I would love. I did it with Judy and Andy, and then still after that show, people were saying, "Oh, Judy won, or Andy won," or I was like, "It wasn't a debate; it was a conversation." People stop making it winner or loser, but it's just that's the same paradigm. That's that germ paradigm, and this. Oh, there has to be a winner. There has to be a loser. It's a mindset. It's a paradigm. But as right now, we are at humanity is at such a critical place in history. Humanity wake up and come together in love and peace. That is what we have to do. And so that's why it's like truth and freedom. Can we please have a conversation? Because there should be no division within 100%. The truth and freedom.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's and with that being said, and you'll agree with this too, I think, is like, that doesn't mean that we then muzzle ourselves and not
Never,
speak. Yeah. Like
never,
people
not at all.
conflate that. Like they think
Okay.
that when I'm calling for unity, that
Yes.
means that I'm just going to shut up and
No,
not share what I think.
no,
It's
no.
still sharing what you think and putting out the information. It's just doing so with love and compassion, recognizing if other people aren't fully on the same page, that's okay. And recognizing that the best way to get them on the same page with you is by approaching them with love and compassion and encouraging them to explore the topic for themselves. That's the best way to actually get them on the same page.
Exactly. That is allowing that other person to be who they truly are. Because long as they're walking in truth and integrity, and I think put this in the email to you and to David, long as they're walking their truth. Now, I don't think all the people in this space that we call the health freedom, truth freedom movement are walking completely in truth. And you and I, we've already talked about them. Yeah. Okay. Because if they're not willing to at least have the conversation, see how David was willing.
He was, and I give him kudos to that.
Yes. Yeah. And Judy wanted to have the conversation with Andy. When people, so when a person says, yes, let's have the conversation, I want to have the conversation.
That's integrity.
That's integrity. That is being truthful. But when people say, no, I don't want to have the conversation at all. And we already talked about two biggies in the space that will not entertain the conversation at all. That means you have something to hide. This is me. 100%. This is coming from me. What are you hiding if you don't want to have the conversation?
Yeah, yes. Especially because, as I did in my article, I went through all of the possible excuses, putting myself in their mind, and I understand where they could become excuses, but when you dissect those excuses, they're nonsense. They're truly nonsense, because again, we're not asking them to take a stance on this issue. Just like you said, have the conversation. Have the conversation. That's it.
And they both clearly, and they've had forever, declared that they are pro-vax.
Yeah.
They have declared they are pro-vax. They just want safer. And I wrote this even before Peggy Hall said it on her show.
Peggy Hall's recent show was
so
but
good. Before a week, and I've got the proof because it's in my article. I said it a week or so before Peggy Hall said it. How do you make poison safer? Tell me. Just answer. Dell, answer that question. Bobby, love you. Love your dad. Love your grandpa, your uncle, love your whole family. How do you make poison safer, please? Just tell me. That's the one question I have for both of them.
Well, I sorry to interrupt. I had an interesting, I need to stop doing that. I did that too much with the David interview.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I had a conversation with a few of my friends. I'm in this texting group with a few people who are also like educators in the health freedom movement. And it was a video that CNN actually posted of a former podcast interview that I did with Bobby, and CNN posted it from my former organization, Health Freedom for Humanity. And he says something in there to the effect of, I'm pro-vaccine. I've just never seen a safe one. And we were talking about his comments in that video. And I said, you can't possibly be pro-vaccine just, for all the reasons we're saying. And one of my friends said, well, the concept of a vaccine could possibly work. And I said, no. We're if we're talking about an injection that stimulates health, that is a different category. It's a category error. When we're talking possibility that they could work, that would necessitate that a virus was proven to be pathogenic and proven to cause disease. There is no possible concept, period. There is no possible concept stimulates any health, except for, and this is going back to the mind, in the very few circumstances that I imagine someone's mind is so powerful and they truly believe that this poison, and it is poison, can stimulate healing. Straight up, 100%.
Straight up.
But, and I acknowledge that, and that's where it goes back to the mind is the most powerful thing. But those are like extreme circumstances.
Right.
There is no possibility for a safe.
No.
And I have heard some people say this is a political ploy to allow them to get these conversations on the table. And I could possibly see that. But when you consistently say, I am pro-vaccine. I'm pro-safe vaccine. And Bobby has even been quoted as saying, if vaccine can be proven definitively to be safe and effective, he would be okay with mandating that product. And that's,
Wow.
yeah, that's a huge red flag for me. And that was a
Wow.
former statement, so he might have changed his position on that.
Right. But and then I love how Peggy interjected. So okay, who's going to be the guinea pig? How many babies are going to be guinea pigs for these safe? I mean, I'm like, God has given us everything we need to stay healthy. Our healthy immune system is all we need to stay healthy. Now, if they stop poisoning the water, poisoning the air, poisoning the food, poisoning the soil, stop putting poisoning in toothpaste, stop poisoning us, hey, yeah, we'll be a lot more healthier.
100%. And this is where it comes back like to awareness, right? Like mental awareness and like awareness of your external environment. You can become aware of those things as you are. I would imagine you don't put any of those poisonous toothpaste with fluoride or anything like that. The point is you can become aware of those things and then correct that and start looking for more natural options, getting back to the earth. And, you know, looking at something like chemtrails, like, am I going to go out on a limb and say that there are no ways that they are infringing and imposing upon us that we don't consent to? No, I don't think that's necessarily true, because chemtrails is an example of that. Or just like water that we bathe with if we're traveling, right? Like there is absolutely poisons that we are not consenting to. But I think a lot of it is by our consent. And irrespective of whether it's consent or not, I think you can overcome all of that stuff by getting clear here and getting clear here and your connection to there.
Yes, exactly. This is so true. And there's no proof of it, but you have that mind, body, heart, and soul connection. When you have that mind, body, soul connection, nothing can touch you without your soul's permission.
100%.
We are sovereign divine beings of light. That is what we are. The body is just a vehicle. Like, how many cars have you had in this lifetime? I've
only had a few. Yeah,
well,
I've only had a few. I'm only 31 years old, so I've only had.
Oh my God, you're not that young.
I'm 30.
I'm 61.
Yeah,
Okay, you're
30,
younger
31.
than both my children.
Yeah.
My son is 38. He is, because there is no such thing as that.
No,
my son
he's
is 38,
still
and my daughter is 42. Okay, so you're younger than both my children. But I'll tell you, you're a baby, but you're a weight baby. But I'll tell you, yes, believe me, I've had maybe two entire life, and this is back in the 60s when they were doing it in school. Can you imagine?
Wow, that's so
sending
crazy.
your child? And actually, I was just talking to a lady just the other day. We're the exact same age. She didn't even get one of them because she was sick that day and didn't go to school.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I mean, I've had like, and I'm like I said, I eat all organic. I try to stay keto organic, and I only try to do organic poultry and wild caught fish on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday.
Awesome.
But the rest of the week, I'm vegetarian, keto, and exercise as much.
You do raw milk?
Huh?
Do you do raw milk at all as a vegetarian?
I am no almond milk. I love my almond
milk. Okay.
Almond milk. Yeah, I love my
almond milk. I previously only drank almond milk, and I've started switching to drinking like raw milk, like like cow's milk that's raw though, not pasteurized, not homogenized.
Okay.
And I previously had gut issues from drinking normal cow's milk, like really bad, and then skin issues. And I don't have that anymore drinking raw milk.
Okay. I fell in love. I didn't use to, before almond milk, I did the soy milk, which I never liked. I never liked soy milk. But then I discovered almond milk around 2010. And I'm like, ooh, I like this. You know, so I kind of, I like it too. Yeah. So, and I was actually a vegan for 18 months. I tried it for 18 months. I'm like, okay. But I felt my body needed some animal protein.
Animal products,
so, yeah. And I only,
that happens to a lot of people too. Yeah. That happens to a lot of people.
Only organic eggs and only organic chicken, organic turkey, and wild caught fish on the weekends. Because I realized 18 months being vegan, you don't have to have meat every day, you know? So 5 days a week, no meat, 2 days a week, I enjoy my.
You don't have to have any food. I've had
I know
well,
this is
technically
true.
5 days without food right now because I did
This
juice,
is very true.
only juice the first day. So
Yeah, this is true. And I've gone on juice fast. I can do a 10-day juice fast.
that's great though.
I could do a 3-day water fast, but I can definitely do an organic juice. I'm just like organic. If anything in my product is not organic, it is at least non-GMO. I stopped with the toothpaste with the poison in the toothpaste in '07. So it's like, yeah, only 100% spring water. I try to drink as much as I can. So I'm doing that. And I feel like I am healthier at 61. I feel like I'm a lot healthier than people your age that I meet, seriously. Like
For
I
real.
see
Yeah.
these 30-year-olds that can barely move, you
Yep.
know? Yeah. So
You know what's crazy is I'm technically a 100% disabled veteran. Like I'm technically 100% disabled, but I don't feel it at all. Like not even a little bit. So
it's mind
yeah.
over matter. It truly is. When my daughter was first diagnosed, and this is before I was even awake, when my daughter was first diagnosed with MS in 2003, she was 23. The first thing out of my mouth, and this was my higher self talking, first thing out of my mouth is, do not believe it.
Mm.
Do not accept that diagnosis. And I've had people on my shows, especially in the early years of my show. I've had people on my show that have cured themselves of MS. There's nothing non-curable. And
100%.
but see, my daughter and I, we were like water and oil
Right.
and water. When she hit 13, nothing mommy said made any sense. So, but that was her soul's path to
Mm.
walk that walk. And I know that, like I said, there is no such thing as death. All there is
Exactly.
eternal life. It was a soul plan that both my children and I had made before my birth. They
Mhm.
chose me to be their mom, and they like, Mom, we're not going to hang out in that place called Earth as long as you. But you have a mission, so you stay there, take care of your mission. We'll still be by your side. My
It's
son's on this
beautiful.
side, and my daughter's on this side. They're both with me, and they
It's
give me
beautiful.
my inspiration.
It's so beautiful. And this is why, this is such an interesting time, right? Because I'm moving back from my analytical and getting back to my heart, and that's the purpose of my water fast.
Yes,
And I think for the health freedom movement at large, it like I said, the inner work is important, but what
yes,
comes as a byproduct of the inner work is that inherent spiritual connection. For some that may look like Christianity, for some that may look like this or that, whatever, that's fine. Just a knowing that we are not the body. What we are is not the body, because when we believe we are the body, then we are subject to the propaganda surrounding the dissolution of the body. When we know that we are not the body on a deep, deep, deep level, we have that knowing, then we are not subject to any of the fear-based propaganda that they throw at us, or that any alternative side throws at us. The
yes.
fear does not permeate our being because we know that our essence is not in this material plane.
Exactly. And I love that you just said not just the propaganda of the mainstream news, but there's just as much propaganda coming on the truth and freedom movement, meaning
100%.
the fear-based,
Oh my goodness.
propaganda. And on a daily basis, I am trying gently and lovingly to bring people out of that fear-based propaganda. And
You're doing
knowing,
a great
waking
job.
up to thank you,
For
waking
real.
up to who you truly are as a sovereign. Now, I coined this phrase, sovereign, first word. You are a sovereign, divine being of light. That is what you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. That's great.
Yes.
That's great.
Well, I'm going to let you get back to your dad and your water fast, but this has been great. Please share it across your platforms. I'm going to share it across all my platforms. In the description of this, I will have the link to your conversation with David, because we talked about that a lot. I'm going to have a link to my thank you video to the cabal. And I did that 2.5 years ago. Thank you for waking up, being the catalyst to humanity's awakening. So thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. We are so on the same page. But the point of this my whole platform is not that we're on the same page, that a person has to be, like you said, doesn't matter what your religion, doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter your politics. What it matters is that we come together in love and peace and understand That's where we have to come from to win. They are the cabal, the powers that be are the masters of that low vibration. We can't beat them on that playing field. We beat them when we rise above them. That's how we win.
Amen.
Yes,
Beautiful.
and we've already won. Actually,
Yeah.
see, I don't listen to news. I listen to channel messages, and in many different channel messages, they have said humanity is already a year ahead of schedule with our awakening. We have already won. Yes, we
Beautiful.
are. Awesome. Thank you so much. You get some rest because I can't.
Yeah, that's
21 days of water. I'm gonna be surrounding you with love and light.
Thank you. Yeah, prayers appreciated.
Thank you so much. Oh, this has been so great.